And,
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Vin, episode 6, and I'll tell you, a lot of people use the word legend very, very loosely, but I think our guest tonight definitely gets that moniker. Please introduce the man of the night.
Absolutely legend. The OG of Jersey. So, when I was a teenager, Gaspari was the name, right? And I was friends with a lot of guys who trained down in South Jersey, and it was like all exciting to hear about Rich and when he would compete. And I remember seeing him at the Night of the Champions coming in second place to Albert Beckles, and I thought, if that's second place, man, I don't know I thought Rich won that night. Probably you do too. But we got a lot of stories we're going to cover tonight. From how did you train? How did you get to train with Lee Haney? Your striated glutes, to a whole bunch of other questions, right?
Okay.
And stories. But we're going to start out with kind of like something real personal and dear to me. My niece Christy had a heart transplant back in 1986, February of 86. And I was friends with Joe Morrow. Do you remember him?
Yeah, Joe Morrow, yes.
Yeah, I was friends with him, and I would work out with him every once in a while. And I think he let you know that Christy was a fan of yours. And I can't remember the story and everything, but did you come up to her house? Did you drive to her house and give her stuff?
Yeah, I did. I did drive to her house and, to surprise her, to go there, because I mean, having a heart transplant, I wanted to do something special that, she was a big fan, and they told me about that. So I drove all the way up there, gave her an autographed, poster, and, took pictures with her, and, said.
And did you drive up in a Corvette?
I think so back then. Yeah, I had a yellow Corvette.
Okay, yellow Corvette. I was telling my sister Charlotte, her mom, and she's like, "Are you sure you remember that?" I'm like, "I remember a yellow Corvette because I lived directly across the street, and I was sitting on the steps. It was a summer night, and this Corvette pulls up, and I'm like, no way, it's Gaspari." Yeah, so that was pretty cool, and we thank you for that. I mean, you touched her, and she was a huge fan and everything. So thank you for that.
No, that's. I mean, it's a pleasure. I did a lot of those things, when I was competitive in bodybuilding. I guess I don't know if she was part of the Make-A-Wish, but I did. I did a bunch of Make-A-Wishes that they said, "I'd love to meet Rich Gaspari," and I went to hospitals to visit people that were sick. I know it's hard to do, like, people with terminal cancer or leukemia and things like that. I would go hospitals and visit people and stuff, because I said, God, this guy's or this girl is like, pulling to just survive, and I'm happy that I'm alive and healthy, so.
Yeah, well, we thank you for that. So first big question: how did you become Lee Haney's training partner?
well, not sure, like, I won the junior nationals in 1983. And from the junior nationals, I went into the nationals. It was in San Jose, California. When I went to that show, I went in as a heavyweight. I was like 205. I'm like your height. I'm like 5'8". I went in as a heavyweight. I went into that show, and I placed 5th as a heavyweight on my first try to the nationals. And that year, the heavyweight was stacked. You had basically, who won was Bob Paris.
Wow.
Rory Littlemeyer came in second. Mike Christian came in third. Matt Mendenhall came in 4th, who the year before placed second to Lee Haney, and I came in 5th out of that. So it was a really tough lineup with all the other heavyweights. So Ed Connors, who owned the Gold's Gyms at the time, all the Gold's Gyms, he basically said to me, he's like, "Listen, if you go down to light heavyweight, you'll probably definitely win your class and turn pro. And how about if I offer you a job to move to California? I'm opening up a Gold's Gym in Reseda, which was the Valley." So for me, it was like, holy crap, I just came in 5th in the nationals. I won the junior nationals, my first try, beat David Hawk. And I was like, I want to move to California. Now, at the time, I was going to Rutgers University. I was a pre-med student going to Rutgers University. And I basically told my parents, like, I'm going to take a temporary leave of absence from college, and I'm going to go to California to be a bodybuilder.
How did that go over?
my parents are so upset, that I was doing this. And I go, it's something I have to do. It's my dream. I'm going to do it. I'm moving to California. If I don't turn pro in 1 year, I'm going to move back and forget about bodybuilding. So I moved to California, and I got a job in the Receipt of Golds. And in that Receipt of Golds, there were some like really great bodybuilders. There was Albert Beckles, who little did I know that I'd be competing against him, and like you said, coming second to him. Bertil Fox, Fred Hatfield,
Wow,
Jeff Everson, Corey Everson. You had Hulk Hogan. You had another guy, Sting. His name was Steve Borden, but Sting was working out there.
Yep.
And you had Lee Haney. So I was in this gym, as the manager. I was the early morning manager working there. And I would train, in the afternoon, and Lee Haney was there, and he'd watch me train. And I mean, when I was younger, I really trained like I was so hungry to win, the nationals. And back then, Vinny, you had to win the nationals, and then you had to win the Mr. Universe. There was only 5 pros in the whole world. Not like today. There's like 100, 200, 300 pros every year that come out. There's only 5 pros in the whole world. So I had to win that show and win Mr. Universe. So I was training with a vengeance to win those shows. And Lee Haney saw me training, and he came up to me. He goes, "Hey, boy." He goes, "Man, you train super hard. You're like an animal." He goes, "You want to be my training partner?" And I was like, "Your training partner? Holy crap.
Wow.
This is a pro who wants me to be his training partner." So I was like, "Fuck yeah, I want to be your training partner. Let's train." And that was it. We started training together, and just like it was, to this day, to me, he's like my big brother, because a lot of what he taught me is like, I wanted it all, but back then when I was in Jersey, I trained in a gym that was more like powerlifting. I lifted really heavy. I mean, I had some really impressive lifts in my 20s. I can easily do 405 body neck presses, which was like crazy. I was doing like 525 bench. I was doing like over 700-pound squats, but I was super strong. But I went to California, and he's watching me lift, and he's like, "Are you a power lifter or are you a bodybuilder? You're going to be a bodybuilder or what?" And I was like, "I'm a bodybuilder." So little by little, he kind of changed my style, that I was, more stricter movements, training the muscle. And if Lee Haney, he always say like stimulate, don't annihilate.
Yep.
And although I believe in annihilating a muscle to get it to grow, but he was more about, not just lifting super heavy weights. Lee Haney was strong, but I never, and I was impressed because I can bench a pretty good amount of weight. And a lot of times, I challenge him. Let's see if you can bench more than me. And he's always doing lightweight, like maybe you do like 275, maybe 315 on a bench, but real slow and intention. But then he go, "Okay, boy, let me show you." Boom, he put like 450, and he would do it. He was strong as well, but he never just lifted heavy weight to lift. He did it to work the muscle, and that's what he taught me when I started training with him, was really to focus on training a muscle and also looking at your weak points. When I won the junior nationals and went into the nationals, I had really big legs. My legs grew very, very easily, but I was a little more like slope shoulders. I needed more delts, I needed more back. I had a really good chest. I needed more arms. So with Lee Haney, I actually stopped training legs for almost a year. I did like I trained his legs, had him train his legs because he needed bigger legs. But I was doing more like sissy squats, leg extensions, hack squats. I went lighter on any of the movements on legs. I stopped doing deadlifts because deadlifts, I felt, really built my obliques, and I had really thick obliques. So I had to like streamline my physique to have a smaller waist, bring my legs down a little bit, but then really focus on capping my delts, making my back wider, making my arms bigger. And, with Lee, it was more about training, full extension, contraction, training muscles. We did some drop sets, some supersets, but a lot of it was like strict form and squeezing the muscle. And it transformed my body to then have better upper body. And that year, we trained a whole year together, or probably about 8 months together. I was getting ready for the nationals, and he was getting ready for the Mr. Olympia. Now, mind you, he went in his first Olympia, came in third place. And we didn't know who the favorite was. I knew that Sergio Oliva was coming. You know, he was in retirement. He was making a comeback. You had Samir Benoud, who won it the year before. You know, Muhammad Makeawish. There's a lot of the other competitors in it. But Lee Haney, that year, he gains, I guess, like 15 pounds from what he was in 83 to 84. He was a much bigger Lee Haney when he competed in that show. And, you know, I mean, his physique, he had just this tiny waist and this wide back and like his back. I remember, like, I was backstage at the Olympia oiling him up, and I remember him just losing my hands in his back because his back was just so freaking wide and thick, you know, like thick. And, you know, I was backstage and I'm like, he's going to win this show. He's going to win the Olympia. And I just saw like the other competitors in the show. I go, he's going to get this. He's going to beat Samir Benoud, Sergio Oliva, who they made a big stink about. You know, it just was off so many years that he didn't really, I mean, he looked good, but I mean, he came in like 7th or 8th, but he wasn't the Sergio Oliva everyone was talking about that was going to clean up and win the show. So 2 weeks later was the Nationals. Now, mind you, I told you I was 205 the year before, but I basically over-dieted because I was so concerned about making weight. I ended up dropping weight, and I ended up competing in the Nationals at 188.
Really?
Like 10 pounds lighter than I should have been because I was 205, and I wanted to compete at 198, but I competed at 188. Was a week later or 2 weeks later was the Mr. Universe World. I ended up winning, by the way, winning the Nationals in 84. That 2 weeks later went into the Mr. Universe. So what I did is I started eating a little more because I was just like flatter. So I ended up eating more, still being about 192 in the universe, and then winning the Mr. Universe. And that's when I got my pro card. So Joe Weider is like, I'm sorry, I won the Nationals first. I made it the opposite. I won the Nationals and the Universe and then the Olympia because I remember Joe Weider going, do you want to go into Mr. Olympia? Because back then, you qualified. When you won Mr. Universe, you qualified for the Olympia. That was your qualification.
Okay.
So they didn't have like today, you got to go on all these shows to win. You won the Universe, you go into the Olympia. So, you know, as the first time I, got to meet Joe Weider, and Joe Weider's like, would you like to go into Mr. Olympia? And I'm like, well, I'm training with Lee Haney. I can't go against my training partner. And I ain't ready. I ain't ready to go in the Olympia. I was not ready to go in the Olympia. And I felt like I wanted to win. I won these shows, and I wasn't going to go in the Olympia. Because if I wanted to go to the Olympia, I wanted to win the Olympia. That was my goal.
Yeah,
so I made a mistake. 2 weeks later was the Mr. Olympia, which then Lee Haney won. And that's the history of me training with him. We trained a little while longer. And I remember after the show that I turned pro, he won the Olympia. We were training together, and he saw me training, and he still saw the tenacity. And he goes, dude, I see you have it that you want to be a pro. I go, I'm pro now, and I'm after you now. I told him. But it was that, it was out of more out of respect and love. Like I said, for me, whenever people ask me when I was getting second place in the Mr. Olympia, you feel you should have beaten Lee, I always say, like, listen, he's got superior genetics to me. I just know that if he's off, that's how I'm going to beat him. Right. I always accepted that was my way of beating him. And I always said to Lee, just don't be off, because if you're off, I'm going to beat you. And he called me Rich the Itch because he knew like I was after him, and he knew the tenacity and focus I had. I just didn't have his genetics. I did the best I could for what I had. And like you said, which was really, when I went into the Night of the Champions, you got to remember, that was October. I won the Mr. Universe. The Night of the Champions was in May. Mm-hmm. But I went from 192. I competed in the Night of the Champions at 210. So I went from 192 to 210. A lot of it, as you know, Vinny, and I just ensured that I was so depleted when I won those shows that going into the the night of the champions, all I did was fill out with glycogen. I was as ripped or more ripped.
I remember.
Just bigger. So when I walked on stage, people were like, who the fuck is that guy? They were like, they didn't even think I had a shot because remember, I was like in the 188, 192, winning the universe and the nationals. No one thought I had a shot of even doing anything as a pro. But I chose it because I was a totally different pro when I competed.
Because I remember when you hit the stage and, the nationals was one thing. But then when you became a pro, you set the standard for graininess, conditioning, and like striated glutes because nobody had that back then.
No.
What did you do besides being a lunatic from New Jersey in the gym training? Did you do anything? Did you say, I see how guys are training, I'm going to train differently? Did you diet differently?
I did diet differently. I mean, when I dieted for the nationals, I was kind of following like more of a low carb diet, and I found that low carb diets didn't work for me. Like going like a low calorie, low carb, high protein, low carb diet just didn't work for me. And I logged everything I did. So I logged my macros and how I ate. I do very well with 35, 45, 20. 35% protein, 45% carbs, 20% fat.
Mm-hmm.
That was my ratio that I dieted on. Now, I manipulated my calories, but I never manipulated the carbs. I always kept my carbs in my diet when I dieted for show. I also remember, if you remember a lot of my old videos, that, I cut out gluten. I didn't have any gluten in my diet when I dieted.
You were ahead of your time with that.
Yeah, nobody knew about that. I read a lot of nutritional books, and they're saying, and I read something, and I was reading something about gluten, that it causes water retention.
Right.
So I'm like, that's interesting. So if this is going to cause water retention, I got to make sure that I don't, intake it. So I dieted on my complex carbs. Basically, were sweet potatoes, oatmeal, and rice, brown rice.
And correct me if I'm wrong. You also ate cream of rye.
Cream of rice, actually, cream of rice. When I carved up for a show, I did eat cream of rye. I ate cream of rye, oatmeal, sweet potatoes, and brown rice. That's all I ate for my complex carbs.
Yeah.
I never, ate anything remote like that was like a wheat product or any products that contain gluten because I knew they were going to make me hold water.
Right.
I also, like I said, logged everything I did, and I would experiment. I stayed pretty lean off season, so I could experiment, taking in more calories or increasing carbohydrates and seeing what was working for me. I also did a lot of like, my proteins. When I dieted for show, I didn't eat any red meats, but I did eat like fish, a lot of fish.
A lot of fish.
Fish oil. I made sure I had fish oil in my diet. I would have some, oily fish as well for the fats that I have, but a small portion of my meals were that. I even ate a little bit of fruit for a diet. I would eat like a measured amount of and it was like strawberries, blueberries, melon, like cantaloupe. Those were like my snack fruits that I would diet for a show. And it was just really being in tune with keeping a log that I looked at everything, how I looked, how I felt. And that's what I think I just really focused on making sure that when I was dieting for a show as well, I don't know if you remember, I was, I think maybe you came down south to train at Muscle Mill, back then it was Gold's Gym, with Ronnie Capodanno. I would have him critique me and what I look like. I would spend hours, and this is what I see a lot of these new bodybuilders not doing, not posing. I would spend hours in that posing room, posing, tensing, holding poses, sometimes 15, 20 seconds, like just, iso, which was iso tension. And I feel that definitely made me harder, on stage.
Sure.
By being conditioned in my posing. When it came to the ripped glutes, what happened with that room had a mirror and we were posing. I was posing in the mirror, posing my back, getting my Christmas tree. And I knew I was ripped when I got my Christmas tree. But then I remember Ronnie going, holy shit, your fucking ass is ripped. Because when I posed, you can see the striations in my ass. And I'm like, wow, my ass is ripped. Holy crap. So I basically, I I don't know if you know, she's still doing trunks, but CJ,
Yep.
I knew her. She lived in Jersey. I go, CJ, can you cut my trunks? Where, like, if you look at classic bodybuilding, those trunks are what the trunks were back in the day.
Right.
Yep.
It basically covered your glutes. So I go, can you cut my trunks so that you can see my glutes? He goes, I never done that. So basically you're asking for like a Brazilian cut. I said, yeah, I need like a Brazilian cut. And then I took some glue and I glued my trunks so that you could see my glutes, but it didn't ride up into my ass to have like a freaking G-string. And when I went into that show and I posed my back, I guess it was never seen before that someone had striated glutes. And I made sure that the judges and the audience saw that. And I've always, you know, if you watched my posing, I was always popping. I never like gracefully did pose. When I hit a shot, it was like, boom, boom. And I would hit shots like that. So that when you saw that, you would see the graininess. You would see like the striations. You would see all that. And for me, it was all about awing the audience in my routines. And I mean, that's how I think genetically also I was able to get very, very lean. You know, a lot of guys have difficulty, you know, you have a certain set point that they can't get below that. They start losing muscle. I was able to go below that and get that, you know, that really thin, you know, skin
Right.
that I was able
Now,
to get.
How old are you now?
I'm 59.
Okay, I'm going to be 56 in April. And so when you were training, like, and you know, in Jersey, it was like, you know, if you don't win a small show, don't think about going to the Jersey and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But we also had, which you completely understand, you're talking about how much you logged in your nutrition. And when I talk to guys like you that were ahead of me, the conversation was usually about compound movements, training very hard, and nutrition. And today, and you've been very vocal about it, today it's kind of like the opposite. And guys aren't focused on, as you said earlier, going in not with the mindset of getting bigger, but you went into the gym to get better. And the end result was a bigger and better version. So how do you feel like, what's your take on what you see today going on in the gym? Well, the competitors, I should say, because there's a lot of people out there just doing it for the Instagram and not really.
You know, like I actually put up, I did our own podcast with John Romano talking about today's bodybuilders. The younger bodybuilders don't train that hard, you know, the pros. But I wasn't speaking about, you know, there's some elite Olympia pros and Generation R to make controversy, puts a picture of Nick Walker and Haney Chopin, both of those guys that train really hard.
Right.
But they show those two guys that I'm saying generally the pros don't train as hard as how I train. There are, you know, some pros that do train hard. You got guys like Milo Skarchev that are training some of these pros with a lot of the old school style giant sets, drop sets, slow-mo reps. I mean, I use every combination that I could use to stimulate my body to grow and go to failure. A lot of these guys, they hit a set, and like you said, they're all Instagram influencers that their training is more to like what they're going to post on Instagram. It becomes like a photo shoot or a video shoot. For me, training, I can't sit there and, you know, do a video shoot of myself and then say I'm going to be in this like zone in training. For me, when I'm training, when I was competing, I was in a zone. Nobody get my fucking way. Get out of my fucking way. I'm training, you know, and that's how I was. So if you're going to sit there and do like a video shoot like they do today, how are you training hard? And I train with, say, amateurs or just pros that just turned pro. And at my age, in my late 50s, still can stay right there with them or actually beat them at exercise. And I'm like, how the hell am I beating you? I should not be beating you. I'm freaking past my prime, you know? So that's why I kind of, you know, say that. And they just train differently. And I had a lot of controversy because I put a picture, and I want to do my picture. So I put a picture of Dorian Yates against Haney Chopin's back. And this was just a recent Olympia that he won. And you're seeing the picture and his back was, you know, smooth. And then they were saying like, well, he didn't go into the shot. It wasn't fair. The picture had different lighting and blah, blah, blah. But if you're in rip condition, I don't care what the lighting looks like. You're going to see the muscle. Now, mind you, I was at the Olympia. I saw Haney Chopin. From the front, he looked amazing. He was like very dense, hard. I mean, the only criticism I have, I mean, and I hate to say this, like he was putting something in his delts, that I was saying. But from the front, he looked amazing. I'm sorry, from the back, he wasn't shredded. It's not that he wasn't cut. I mean, if you look from far away, you can see the separation in his back and all. I was more for Derek Lunsford, that I felt, who came second, had this wide back. I mean, and I always think, the Olympia was always won by the back. This is what I was always told. Like Lee Haney won by his back, Dory won by his back, Ronnie Coleman won by his back. You know what I mean? Phil Heath won by his back. So when you had somebody, I mean, he deserves it. I'm not going to take it away from him. I think Haney deserved the Olympia. He looked amazing. He works his ass off, and for me, critiquing him as like when you call legend, I'm trying to make him better and say, if you improve, you can be a multiple Mr. Olympia, not just a one-time Mr. Olympia. And because right now, I think the lineup at the Olympia, you got some guys coming up like Samson, Derek Lunsford, there's a lot of guys out there that I think are going to be, have the potential of being, the Mr. Olympia.
I feel like Nick Walker is the version of you today.
Yes, I love Nick Walker because he's like they used to say. I had his same attitude, that they call it cocky, but he's just confident. Yeah. But a lot of people don't like him because they say he's like cocky, but friggin', he's that guy. He's that Jersey attitude. I'm going into a show to win. And I respect that. When I see him, I said, dude, you remind me of me when I was fucking my 20s, exactly how he acts. And I mean, he's a great bodybuilder. Like I saw him, Vinny, I saw him in the Attila's gym before he turned pro, and he was a nobody. Like he wasn't anybody. And I saw him as this kid, and I'm like, holy shit, who's this kid? He was friggin' huge. I mean, you look at him, he walks on stage at 5'7" at 260. Yeah. That is just massive. Massive. I think he can sacrifice some of the size. And I get criticized because I go the open bodybuilder. If you look at 212 and you look at classic bodybuilders, those guys are ripped, right? They're still in great condition. Even, I saw pictures of you, Vinny. You're like ripped. You're still old school ripped. But then you look at the open Olympia, and the guys are more for mass. Someone like, Nick, he's so big that if he sacrificed 20 pounds and he weighed 240 or 250, he would be shredded because he's proportional. He has all the proportions. It would be sick. I think he would win the Olympia. I mean, I think he could, very well win the Olympia.
Someone had, I think Sean Ray had said something a while back about if there was a 212 back in your day, maybe there wouldn't be a Rich Gaspari or Sean Ray because you would be in that box, right?
Yeah, in that box.
So maybe because today there is a classic and 212, subconsciously the guys in the open feel like, well, that's that category, and I'm going to come in bigger. Because, I mean, guys in your day, they were enormous and shredded. So it can be done.
Well, I think that changed this last year because Derek Lunsford and Haney Chopin were both 212 athletes.
Right. They're coming up.
And they went up and they put, I think, Derek, he was 212 when he won the 212 Olympia. And I think maybe he was like 230. He wasn't heavier than that in last year's Olympia. Great proportions, shape, and he wasn't the biggest guy. I mean, he beat Nick Walker, who's way bigger, and beat, Samson, who was bigger.
Right.
So I do believe, maybe they're looking at it differently. I talked to judges and I asked them, why aren't you judging on, conditioning? Because there's nobody in the open that's like that kind of condition. Because I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the biggest and most ripped bodybuilder I remember Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman was just massive, but also shredded. Striking boots. He had it all. I mean, I say his last 2 years, I think he got too big, last 2 or 3 years. But when he first turned pro, he was just the most impressive bodybuilder because he had that small waist, striated glutes. Everything was just rock hard on that guy. And he had mass that I was nowhere near, what he looked like.
Like Rich, one of our close friends, Jimmy Mentis, who I know you're very, very close with as well. He was analyzing the Olympia with us, and he feels that most of the people nowadays come in still 2 weeks out and can still use or lose another 10 pounds. Kind of like what you're saying a little bit. Sacrifice a little more, not play the size game, but play the shred game.
I just think that there's some reason the open is just about mass. And then you're seeing, but then you see 212 athletes. Sean Laredo, he's shredded, little guy, shredded to the bone, at 212. He's not even 212. He's like 180, whatever he is, because he's so short. But he looks massive, but he's hard in condition.
And he's doing the Arnold in a couple of weeks.
He's doing the open. The open or the 212. So we'll see.
212.
We'll see. So we'll see how he does in the open, because he's got proportions and shape and he looks great.
Sean beat Sergio Oliva Jr. at the Legion,
Florida. Okay.
No, in Reno, and he also beat Grimes. Those 2 guys.
So there you go.
Yeah.
But can he beat Nick Walker? That's another. I don't know about that. It's a big leap, because just Nick is just so massive.
It's going to be an exciting Army.
Yeah. I'm going to be there. I mean, it's pretty hard to believe that I won that show 35 years ago, and they're having the 35th anniversary. So, of course, I'm invited to go there with all the prior winners, to be there on stage, which is really cool.
Awesome.
So somebody had a question here for you, Rich, because somebody's asking questions here you guys don't see. What do you think about getting rid of the 212? We have Derek and Hottie, former 212s. And if Clarito wins the Arnold, okay, do you think they should get rid of the 212? Showing that these 212 guys can now hang with the big boys.
I mean, the elite guys, I mean, if you got to remember, I was competing against Lee Labrada, Muhammad Makeawish. There was a lot of, Lee Labrada did unbelievable. He's only like, I don't even know if he was 180 when he competed as a pro. And so, I mean, if you have great proportions and shape, you should be in the, open Olympia. Maybe like the old days, that was before my time, when Arnold competed, you had a short class and you had, a under 200 and over 200, and maybe then have them go against each other and who would win that. Maybe do that. But I don't know. I just still think there's a lot of guys that are, that are in the 180s, 190s, 200, 210 that have unbelievable physiques, but just get overlooked because those are guys that are just so much more bigger that they don't really get their due justice. The only thing is if you're in the 212, you're really not Mr. If you win the 212, and no disrespect to 212 athletes, you're really not Mr. Olympia. You're Mr. Olympia when you won the Open. They call it 212 at the Mr. Olympia. They don't call you the Mr. Olympia 212 or the Mr. Olympia Classic. You're winning the Classic at the Mr. Olympia, but you're not the Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia is the Open Mr. Olympia. And that's why I like Hottie Chopin, who competed at 212, went into the Open because he goes, I want to be Mr. Olympia. I don't want to be the 212.
Right.
212 class in the Olympia,
That's funny you're saying that because when the Olympia, like that Monday, kid in the gym asked me, did you see Bum won the Mr. Olympia? And I said, no, he didn't win the Mr. Olympia.
No.
And he won the Classic. And he's like, no, he's Mr. Olympia. I said, no, he's not Mr. Olympia. And we were having this discussion and he's, 17 years old and he just didn't understand the difference.
I mean, he's not Mr. Olympia, and he didn't win a Sandow. I mean, listen, I have all the respect for Chris Bumstead, one of the best.
Yeah, no disrespect to the athletes.
Yeah, no, it's just, but you're not Mr. Olympia. You are the Classic winner at the Mr. Olympia. You're the Classic winner, but you're not Mr. Olympia, But when I have the same arguments with people, saying they're not Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia, it was, back then, it was, Robbie, or it was Hottie Chopin now. And that's who the Mr. Olympia is. And that's, went from who won the first Olympia, Larry Scott, all the way up to, today.
Yeah.
Rich, what was your favorite moment on stage? Was it winning the Arnold, or what was your proudest moment?
I mean, I had a lot of proud moments, competing. One of the proud moments when I won Mr. World, that was before it turned into the Arnold Classic. And I went into that show, and it's funny because I got my first, third place in the Olympia, but they're all saying, Mike Christian could beat me. He was the next guy, because he's bigger, Gary Stridham. But I went into that show, and I came in even more shredded in that show at the Pro World. The conditioning at that show, I don't know why I couldn't repeat it, but when you looked at pictures, my skin was just like paper thin everywhere on my body. And I won that show with a perfect score, all first places. And I won that show. And I was like, can I get any better than this? And I remember Lee Haney in the audience talking to, I forgot who, one of the photographers. He goes, you think I could beat him? So I was like, he was saying like, can he beat me? Because it was just a conditioning, or a shape that just no one ever was used to seeing. And I was getting all that controversy, like, how did I get like that? I remember people saying, I was on dialysis machine, and I was dying in the gym, or I had, 20 heart attacks when I was training in the gym at Ronnie's gym, and they'd call him at the gym and go, well, he's training right now. He's doing like 40 red squats. I don't think he had a heart attack. He was training.
It's funny you saying it, because I remember, I was going back a long time ago, the Enquirer magazine, the newspaper, had a picture of you in an article, and it said, man's skin falls off in the shower. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because I was so ripped. They said I had no skin.
And it was a story about you in the Enquirer. And I remember my mother, she would read those, and she goes, look at this. Rich Gaspari's skin fell off.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But,
go ahead, sorry.
Then, is another thing. I was an anomaly because when I was competing, I never trained in Kemper's gym. John Kemper had the gym with all the Jersey champions.
Right.
And I was like this guy from left field that came out of this obscure gym, more South Jersey. And I remember just like, going against a lot of the North Jersey bodybuilders on my way up. And it was like, who the fuck's this guy? Where did he come from? Where he's training in this obscure gym. He should, I remember Kemper goes, why don't you train in my gym? I said, it's too far for me to go to your gym.
Did you ever compete against Johnny Morant?
Yes, at my end of my career, I did compete against Johnny Morant. But then I wasn't placing as high when I was trying to make a comeback in like 98, 97, 98. And then I got injured. But yeah, I did compete against Johnny Morant.
And when I was starting out, I was training at Billy's gym in Bayonne.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was watching John Natashak get ready for the 84 Nationals.
He was my roommate.
Oh, wow. Your roommate?
What happened was, not at the Nationals, because we won that in New Orleans. But then we went to Las Vegas for the Mr. Universe. And I guess, the IFBB paid for us to be there. So he had, because we're both from Jersey, I didn't know him. We were roommates together, at that show. And I remember, like, I guess, back then he had Bob Gruskin helping him with his diet and, and his training. So he'd be like calling Bob Gruskin, back then there was no cell phones. He'd be calling him on the hotel phone. Bob, what do I do now? Do I eat this? Can I drink water? And I go, John, do you ask him when you have to take a shit? Like, what are you talking to this guy like about everything he's done? I didn't have any coach. And I'm like, listening to him call like 4 or 5 times a day.
You did your own prep.
I did my own prep and what I did. And, I did, it's funny. I did meet up with Bob Gruskin because I don't know if you ever did, but
no,
back then, Bob Gruskin, like, if he saw potential in a guy, he'd, come up and tell you, oh, he never, like some guys say he was gay or not. He never tried anything. He did love the sport. He did try to help, upcoming guys. And he had a lot of upcoming guys that really knew their shit. I mean, Chris Aceto, when you talk to him, all his knowledge comes from Bob Gruskin.
People don't know that. Yeah.
People
don't know the name Bob Gruskin.
Yeah, but when Chris Aceto, talks about his dining experience and what he does and how to prepare for a show. It's all like Bob Gruskin. He said he was like a genius when it came to that. But I didn't use him.
So let me go one step further. When you prep for a contest, because today, like I've lost clients because I didn't give them a peak week. And I would be like, you're in amazing shape right now. We're going to ride this in. Yep. And they'll win a show. And they're like, well, I want to go to another coach because they give me a peak week. I'm like, you just won the show. What are you talking about? So back then, was it like in vogue to say, hey, now it's like I got to carb deplete, I got to carb up, I got to lower my water?
And you hit it on the nose. When I went into the Nationals, I carb depleted and carb loaded. I couldn't fill back up. And when I told you I was supposed to go on that show at 198, I went in 188 was the reason, because I did a carb depletion, carb load. I couldn't get my weight back up.
Okay.
So when I dieted for the Night of the Champions or the Olympias, I just went in the show. I restricted my fluids a little bit, my sodium, and I would just go in the show. I would like try to get myself ready like 2 weeks out, cut my cardio, and actually, loosen my training a little bit because I was so conditioned, and just cruise into the show. Like you said, just cruise into the show. And you don't fuck up if you do things drastically where you deplete carbs, increase carbs, do this sodium loading or depleting. You don't hit it on the nose. And you're exactly right. I think too many guys want to do this peak week, but if you just get this guy to win his show, why does he then think that he has to go a carb depletion and a carb loading phase?
Because they're so brainwashed with what they got to jump on a bandwagon today. Whatever.
But I knew it didn't work for me, and I just never did it. I would cruise into a show. I was in condition. I would cruise into a show.
Do you remember Gary Camille?
Yeah, I remember Gary Camille. That's one of that show. He had what was called the Jersey Cup. Yeah, that was the first. I didn't go. I never won the Mr. New Jersey. I went into his show, the Jersey Cup, and then went into the Junior Nationals. But Gary Camille was, it was near where I lived, so I would go there to train.
So I remember, like in 2019, when I was coming back and I was going into the Masters Pittsburgh Pro, I was at his gym for a G Code nutrition seminar event, and I'm in the basement that he had in the gym, and we're posing and we're talking. He said, walk on stage like that, Vin. I'm like, well, no, Gary, I'm going to deplete. I'm going to do this. I'm going to manipulate that. And he goes, look at the way you look. And that was my first thing I thought of was, I'm hearing what everyone's doing today.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do that. But he talked me out of it. And every Masters show I've done so far is just the way you did it back in the day. And
you just go in the show.
I just go in the show. I just walk on stage.
I mean, you're preparing for it, but you're in condition and you don't do any changes. You just go in the show the way you look, and you.
Yeah, one contest I actually had to eat throughout the entire night.
Yes,
because I had like Skeletor face. My face kept getting all sucked in, and
that's what would happen to me is I was dieting for show, and then my weight started just dropping. I had to just eat, and I would eat my way into a show and come in shredded. And I even experimented a couple of shows like where I how you pig out and then like, holy shit, look how I look. And I've done that as well, for shows, because I was so depleted that if I ate, like a whole pizza, what would it do to me, with the sodium if I didn't drink? And I would do shit like that when I was doing like those Grand Prix shows.
Sure.
And the next day it was like, they would look at me like, wow, what did you do? You look amazing.
That's cool.
Rich, when you started competing, was your goal to be Mr. Olympia? What was the goal? Just to win a major show, or?
I was always in my mind to be the best bodybuilder in the world, even though people told me, all doubted that, saying that I didn't have the genetics to be a great bodybuilder. And I always, for me, that negativity was always about that I could show these bastards how well I could be. I had writers telling me I didn't have a chance or a shot to win shows, and I was winning, every major show. I mean, the only show that I didn't win was the Mr. Olympia, but I still came in second 3 years in a row, winning the Arnold Classic, winning the Pro World, winning the European Grand Prix, shows 2 years in a row. I mean, unfortunately, I got injured, which put me into early retirement. And I always tell people that's a blessing in disguise, because I was so crazy in my training. I could have ended up like Lee Haney, not Lee Haney,
Ronnie.
Ronnie Coleman. I'm sorry, Ronnie Coleman, because I trained like an animal, and I knew that if I kept training that hard, you start messing up your joints, your hips, so when I got that injury, which basically I herniated a disc in my neck, ruptured a disc in my neck, that was 1997. I was done.
Okay. So you competed 80s and 90s, two great. You had Lee Haney's and Ronnie Coleman. Who was the better physique in your opinion? Take your friendship out of with Lee Haney, obviously.
Or if you're looking for, you're also, it's unfair because it's two different eras of bodybuilding. So, do I think Lee Haney could have gotten bigger like the way Ronnie Coleman? I think so. They both had great structure and genetics. I would still give it to Ronnie Coleman for the fact that he had these massive arms, massive legs. Lee Haney's legs were a little under par. His arms were not the biggest. But when you look at the two Mr. Olympias that they won 8 Mr. Olympias each, Ronnie Coleman on his last Olympia shouldn't have won his last Olympia. I mean, I thought Jay Cutler should have beaten him, but he still won. And then he competed again and again where he placed lower and lower. Ronnie, you look at someone like Lee Haney, he went into his first Olympia third, won 8 in a row, got out of the sport. He was 32 years old, fresh, you know what I mean, with no injuries, and becoming, the best bodybuilder in the world.
Right.
Do you think, okay, so here's a weird question. Do you think Lee Haney retired because he felt Dorian coming up hard? Or do you think he just figured it's time for me to kind of bow gracefully?
I was really good friends with him. And his last Olympia that he competed in, he asked me actually, because we trained together on his first Olympia. So he goes, I want to train with you. I want you to be my training partner. And I regret it to this day. I did it. But I ended up training in California. But he asked me, let's train together because this is my last Olympia. It had nothing to do. He goes, I want 8 Olympias. Okay. I want to beat Arnold's record, and I'm done. He never said that he was afraid of Dorian because he wasn't. But he basically said, I want to beat Arnold's record. And when I beat Arnold's record, that's going to be the end of my, I'm going to be done. I'm retiring. So he offered to have me live with him, just like I live with him. We lived together, by the way. We were only training partners when we trained together in his first Olympia. I lived with him. And I lived in this little apartment with him, with his wife, in a guest room. And we dieted together. And, two angry bodybuilders. I remember some of the, times where I guess, when you're on a diet, you're grumpy. And I was grumpy to his wife. And he's like, Rich, you better apologize. I want to kick your ass. So I'd go to Shirley. I'd be like, I'm really sorry. I was whatever. It was, because I was dieting. But he invited me to stay with him and train with him in his last Olympia. And I didn't do it. And to this day, I regret it, saying I should have been training with him. It would have been me and him training together, for that show. But he did tell me, this is my last Olympia. I want to beat Arnold's record. Win or lose, I'm retiring.
Cool.
Gotcha. So somebody else had asked too, Rich. He says, I met you in 1990 at the Rich Gaspari Classic in Union, New Jersey. Would you ever consider bringing back that show you guest posed to MC Hammer? You can't touch this.
Yeah, I did run a show for a couple of years with Bob Bonham, the Jersey Classic. We ran it a couple of years in Union, New Jersey, and then I ran it in Asbury Park. I remember what I wanted to do is make it almost like an Arnold Classic. So I rented this beautiful stage for the competitors, and it was an amazing stage that we had for the show. Would I run another show? Possibly. It's hard because there's so many shows. It's so saturated. You go to Jersey or anywhere here, it's just so saturated, the amount of shows that are being run here.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Sean. So another weird one here, and I'm sorry, Rich, but if Rich could not be the face of your brand, what 80s rival would you pick to be the face of your brand?
What rival would I pick?
I guess what 80s competitor maybe would be the face of your brand if you weren't it?
That's a weird question. I guess it's my brand. Gaspari Nutrition is about Rich Gaspari. I mean, I don't know who I pick as someone who wanted to represent my brand. I remember, when Flex Wheeler retired, he wanted to like be a representative of the brand, which I, back then I should have, had got, Flex. But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird question
for that, because it's like, I look at Gaspari Nutrition like when I competed. Gaspari Nutrition, because I can't compete no more, that was my competition. My prep for contests is, building a company, and I built that out of my mom's basement, and all my hard work and sweat and tears built that company to an international company that we're in 50 countries. And, it's everything to me. That's like my baby. Gaspari Nutrition is my baby,
Sure.
and I'm still doing it to this day. It's actually the 25th anniversary of me running Gaspari Nutrition.
Wow.
That's how long I've been doing it.
Cool.
And you were one of the first bodybuilders to do that. Maybe I don't know if you were first to Labrada, but
Labrada was first. Labrada was first. When Labrada started Lean Body, Labrada Nutrition, he did Lean Body. And I remember he started that company. And how he started that company, he was a representative for Metrex. And what happened was they actually gave him a small percentage of that company. But that company was growing so fast that Scott Connolly, who owned Metrex, basically said, I'm going to basically buy you out. So he had to give him like, $1 million, like, and buy him out.
Okay.
So he took that money and he started Labrada Nutrition. I started Gaspari Nutrition with 70 grand, selling my house, living back at my parents' house, selling my Porsche, car, getting a minivan, and then going place to place to place, house to house, selling product. And that's how I started Gaspari Nutrition.
That's cool. That's cool.
Go ahead. I got a question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. You got it.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Your turn. Sorry. I'm jumping in here. I'm excited.
No, it's all good. So when you go to the gym today, what's your mindset? Like when you go and say, I'm going to train chest today, you're not training for a contest. Do you live a healthy lifestyle with how you eat and your dieting? Like what does Rich Gaspari do today?
I definitely live a healthy lifestyle because I want to represent my brand and look good. I want to look good for a guy right now who's going to actually turn 60, which I can't believe, but I'm going to turn 60. And I want to look good. I still have abs. I still, try to look the part. Not as good as you, Vinny, because you're like still competing, which is amazing. But I still, I train 5 days a week. I love training early in the morning. I get up, 5:30 to go to the gym because I like to get it done first. I do fasting training. I don't eat before I go to the gym. I take some aminos, go to the gym. I still train really hard. I have, training partners. I kick their ass in the gym. I love training hard. I don't train as heavy. I do a lot of like slow-mo reps because, I can't go heavy like I did because it hurts.
Yeah.
But I can still feel that if you can make a muscle go to failure, you can still make gains. So if you're doing a slow-mo rep with, that you used to do, I don't know, say you're curling like 60 pounds and you could do 25, 30 pounds in a slow-mo rep and get the same effect. Why not do it to, get that muscle to grow? And I learned that from Tony Friedman because that guy was competing still as a pro. You remember what do they call him? X-Man.
X-Man, yeah.
And so I was in Italy with him and I remember watching him train and he was using like 20-pound, 25-pound dumbbells. And he had these massive, big arms and he was doing like 25-pound dumbbells, like really slow-mo. And I see him training to failure. And he's like, and I watched him train other body parts. And I'm like, that's how you train? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm too old to like train really heavy. So everything I do is like slow-mo reps and to failure. The muscle doesn't know a weight, it knows failure. And if you're training muscle to failure, it could still grow. I mean, how do you train now, Vinny? Because you're older, you still got a lot of muscle mass, and you use lighter weights and just go slower and train to failure.
Yeah, I do. And one thing that I had to put it somewhere that I'm not that guy anymore, and I have to focus on what I can do, not what I can't do. Because you're like, oh, I can't do that anymore, and then you don't realize there's so much more arsenal out there that you can use.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, you put yourself in a box and like, I can't do it, but you can. And like, I think too, like doing exercises that I've never done before. Like I talk about Bulgarian split squats. I've never done them, and now I'm doing them, and my legs are responding to them. So just tweaking things, and I'm still, I've had my injuries too. So I have 14 screws throughout both my shoulders. So I have to be careful, but I enjoy it still. I mean, I say this all the time, before my feet hit the floor in the morning, I'm really excited about training. And when I'm driving to the gym on leg day, I'm kind of getting a little nervous because I know what's entailed. And it's funny because I asked some guys in the gym, I'm like, what are you doing? And it's like a joke today. And they'll like use nicknames. Like I'm doing Legos. I'm like, or leggies. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, are you nervous?
No, I do the same thing. I go to the gym with the same intensity. For me, I work all day with my company. So for me, going to the gym is like my outlet to, it starts my day. And it's like, to me, training in the gym is like my yoga. I go to the gym to train, and I train seriously. Like I go there and I still make, turn people's heads because they see, like when I train with, my training partner or partners, I push them to make them, push to the limit. And people are like, shit, you really train hard still.
Cool.
I said,
so
yeah.
If I get invited to the Masters Olympia, I got to come and train with you.
Yeah, if you definitely, I'd love to.
Because we've never trained together.
No, I know. We never did. I know we always talked about training together. We should definitely do it.
Definitely, yeah. We won't know.
So are you going to the Masters Olympia this year?
I put my, I threw my name in the hat. All the requirements that were necessary. Monday, April 24th is when they announce who's invited.
Wow.
So I don't know. I hope I'm invited. It'll be really cool. Yeah. I mean, I've never been on an Olympia stage, so I would like to, check that box off. As you say earlier, it's not the Mr. Olympia, but it's an Olympia stage, and it's going to be in Romania, so it's going to be cool.
Yeah. No, I think it'd be great. I mean, like to like I said, hats off to you to still look the way you do. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just amazing. I follow you and look at how you look, and I'm like, wow, this guy's still at your age. And I hate that your age. I hate saying that, but it is harder. When you are older. Another thing I want to get into is like you talk about, am I living a healthy lifestyle? Yes, I do. I don't know if you guys know this. In July I had an artificial disc replacement. The disc that ruptured in my neck that basically retired me. I never fixed it. And what happened was that rupture caused like a calcium deposit that was pushing onto my right nerve and actually severing the nerve in my right arm. I would have lost my right arm if I didn't get the surgery. So I got the surgery and I'm now rehabbing to get my right side back. And I'm just so frustrated because I want to get it back. But nerves take a while to heal. Another thing that happened to me last year, and this is something that I stress people to do, is I had a stent put into one of my arteries in my heart. I went in for a routine checkup, but I went to a cardiologist and I did something called a C-score.
Yep.
That C-score was through the roof for me. I went in.
What was your number?
You know what, Vinny? It was like something stupid. I think the highest number is 700.
Yeah. Yeah, I had it done too.
Mine was 2,000.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
So when I went in, they go, you got to come in right away to do a exploratory. They go in through your wrist and they go in all the way to your heart. So they went in and what happened was I had two arteries. One of the arteries was 100% blocked, and that was called the Widowmaker. But what happened through time, my body produced its own bypass. So it was still feeding my heart, even though the one artery was completely blocked.
Wow, you're lucky.
The left artery to my heart was 70% blocked. So he went and he said, I'm going to put a stent in here. The rest was okay, but I have calcium that unfortunately wasn't from steroids. I always sell it to people. I had my uncles die in their 60s. My grandfather died in his 60s. So it's hereditary. And when I talk to the cardiologist, he goes, it's hereditary. Can you do things now? This is why I study the heart a lot. Taking in K2, really important. 200 micrograms I take every day of K2, vitamin D. I do fish oil to take care of my heart. I'm on, medication to lower my medication called Repatha to lower cholesterol. But I look at people, and I tell people, if you want to live long, make sure you check your heart, go into a cardiologist,
Absolutely.
make sure you check your prostate, and make sure you do, what do you call it? They go up your butt, like
colonoscopy.
Colonoscopy. Yeah, if you do those three, those three are killers for men, past 50, and you can pass those and you can catch them early, you can live a longer life. And that's what I found. And the reason I went for the cardiologist is because of what happened to all the bodybuilders dying. A couple of years ago, you see Sean Roden dying, and all these guys dying of heart attacks. I'm like, I got to check my heart.
Yeah.
And
I did the same thing.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm healthy now. I go to a cardiologist every 6 months. He's like, you're great. You can't change the calcium that I had, but I'm not building up any more calcium because I'm watching everything. So I do watch everything I eat. I eat fish more. They're saying when you get older, you can't eat as much protein. I'm not eating as much as I did before. And I'm trying to stay lean, doing cardio 3 days a week.
Yeah, I had the calcium score test too, and it was because I was having really hard issues with my lungs, and it was after I had COVID, and my calcium score was 300, but also I had glass-like crystals in my lungs. And he said, look, I don't know if this number is off because you had COVID, but come back in 6 months. And 6 months later, my calcium score test was 1.
Wow, so that's great.
Yeah.
So you don't have calcium.
No, I mean, for a 55-year-old, I have the normal amount of plaque that is there, but it's not I go now, it's my 4th or 5th time, and it has not increased. So, knock on wood. And I'm in the same way as you. I'm Italian, and my grandfather, I believe, died at 49. My Uncle Jimmy died at 50, and my mother was only put together by chemistry through what's, stents, bypass surgeries, quadruple bypass surgeries. And she lived longer than she should have if there wasn't the technology. So, you got to pay attention to your...
You got to pay attention to your health, get blood work done, make sure your blood levels are normal, your cholesterol, triglycerides, your hematocrit, your red blood cells. I mean, I'm on TRT. I'm going to tell people, like, people look at me still training hard. I go, I'm on TRT. My test levels are not like a pro bodybuilder that was like 3 or 4 times higher than normal test levels. I stay within normal range, like 600 to like 800, 900 on the total. Make sure my free testosterone is very high. Mine's at like a 65% of free testosterone. So that's good. I take peptides. Secreticon peptides for increasing natural GH, and that's how I'm taking care of myself.
Do you know Emmerich Denzeg?
Yes.
He turned me on to the Humanofort.
Yes.
And he was telling me about how he knew you and everything. And ever since I've been taking the Humanofort, a lot of my blood panels have been coming back much better.
Yeah. No, that's an amazing product too.
Yeah, and just the recovery.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So. Wow, man, this has been really great. I learned a lot of things about you tonight that I didn't know. I've always been a fan, and coming from Jersey, a lot of times people said we looked alike, and back in the day,
we're brothers.
Yeah, I just gravitated towards you because you were Italian, Rich Gaspari, and it's been an honor and pleasure for having you tonight.
No, thanks. It's an honor to be on your show, Vinny. You're doing the same thing. A lot of people are motivated by what you're doing.
Thank you.
Competing, and I hope you get into that Olympia. I'd love to see it, but I know it was in Romania. It's a little too far, but I don't know who's going in that show. It's funny.
We don't know yet. Yeah, we don't know yet.
But no, it's like I said, it's pretty cool to this day. I have a lot of people that, they say they were motivated by, my accomplishments. You got, when you hear guys like Jay Cutler say, you motivated me to, push myself to be Mr. Olympia. or have a lot of these other guys, from Jersey saying, you're the guy, you're the first guy from Jersey. Like you said, I was the OG. No one ever came out of Jersey to go into the Mr. Olympia. There was nobody doing that. And after me, then a whole slew of guys from Jersey, came about. A lot of great bodybuilders came out of Jersey.
Yeah. So if you want to plug anything, what's the future with you?
Well, still Gaspari Nutrition. If you want to get me on Instagram, go to Rich Gaspari. You want to see me, you want to look at the products, get the products, any of the bodybuilding products, GaspariNutrition.com. The other line I have for people older, I have GaspariAgeless.com.
Right.
I'm also involved in an anti-aging clinic, peakform.com. Check them all out. And, again, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for coming on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Rich, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And as always, thank you so much, folks. Stay tuned for next week when we have Rudy of, Vinny, help me out.
Kabuki Strength.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, folks. Have a great night.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, guys.